All right, I think that more than 1 minute is enough to wait for all the late arrivals. So, again, thank you so much for joining us today. Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are thrilled to have you here with us today for a live webinar about very common FinOps mistakes costing startups more than they think. My name is Yoav Marcus, and I'll be your moderator for today's session. So, whether you're dialing us in from the UK, Europe, or elsewhere, thank you for taking the time to be with us. Today, our speaker and the subject matter expert for the session is Tamir Kafri Djerassi, FinOps Analyst at Automat-it. Hi, Tamir.
Hello, hello, and the D is silent.
Thank you so much. I'm just gonna tell you a few quick things, all of you, the audience here, before we'll start and kick off. So I need to remind you, please allow me to remind you that this session is recorded just for the sake of sharing it with you afterwards and also with the registrants who could not join us today. Also, it's important to let you know that we will leave time for a live Q&A at the end, towards the end, about 10 minutes. So get your questions ready and type them only in the dedicated Q&A field, appears in the bottom, not in the chat, because otherwise it will be hard for us to follow through. And yes, by the end of this webinar, we will be raffling off a $100 US dollars Amazon gift card to one lucky attendee towards the end after the Q&A session. And now, without further ado, sit back, stay curious, and as I mentioned, feel free to drop questions as we go, and let's get started. So, Tamir, over to you.
Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to Three Common FinOps Mistakes Costing some more than they think. Um, let's go over on today's agenda. As you have mentioned, first of all, we're going to talk about, well, the half of the show, those mistakes and how we can resolve them or avoid them. We're going to have a live Q&A. All your questions will be answered, and afterward, we're going to have a nice little raffle for $100 credit for AWS. So let's kick things off. As you have introduced me, I'm Tamir Kafri Djerassi. I am a FinOps Analyst here in Automat-it. I specialize in cloud cost optimization throughout the life cycle of the customer, from startup to enterprises. We know how to do everything. Also, I host the weekly FinOps Tip of the Week and your friendly neighborhood FinOps man, sharing practical, real-world FinOps tips in a funny way with the community. I'm also an AWS champion instructor. I'm a machine learning guide from AWS and Golden Jacket. I'm a FinOps certified times 2 and AWS certified times 12. And of course, if you want, link to my LinkedIn. So we're going to start with a bit of warm-up, understand why exactly, what is FinOps, and also what's the lifecycle with startups and how they correspond with the FinOps lifestyle. We're going to talk about the first mistake. Dashboards are not decisions. Free tier trap and neglecting the tagging hygiene. We'll take a look at those mistakes. How do they appear? What can we do to avoid them? And what can we learn further on? And of course, a QA. So at the beginning, when on high no word was used for heaven, and below no firm ground was called by name. If you know the quote, I'm very proud of you. Let's talk about how a start to work. First of all, we have the dream phase. You just have the concept with you, your solution, your idea, and you just want to roll. Start a POC, get funding, get a seed. So right now, you deploy fast, you deploy faster. So movement is more important than anything else. At some point, you reach what's called the proof of concept. You actually have the idea, you implement it, you start to create costs, you start to maybe even monetize, but still your mindset is move fast, your revenue is not going to come from the actual workload, but mostly from seed and from investors. Then you move to the minimum viable product, meaning now you're starting to actually work, meaning you start to think about cost versus revenue. And obviously, you prefer that revenue will be higher than the cost. Now, you're starting to growth and scaling. You're going out of the initial startup workload, but you're still in a startup mindset. Things get bigger and bigger and more complex. On one hand, bigger is better, right? More workload, more revenue, more cost, awesome. But now you don't have a team of two or three in a garage. You're starting to have an office, a team of 20, 30. I've seen an enterprise still thinking like a startup with 200 DevOps and still no singular CI/CD pipeline protocol. So how does that showcase here in FinOps? First of all, what is FinOps? We have three main, I would say, stakeholders: the engineering side, the DevOps mostly, as an example, the dev, the ops, and so on. The finance, be like the FP&A, the CTO, etc., and the product with the product manager. Each of them have some sort of communication. Finance and engineering, they want cost visibility. Product and finance, they want business alignment. And product and engineering, they want performance. But still, those three stakeholders doesn't really talk together in one voice, in one language, in one room. That's where FinOps comes to shine the light. We take all of those three different stakeholders with different point of views, different concerns, different pain points, different goals, and allow them to find a common ground, a common language to work together. So collaboration between finance, engineering, and product, okay, as I mentioned, align cloud decisions with business outcomes, enable performance and scalability without waste, and bridge the gap between financial control and engineering speed. Meaning we can think about agility, right, as kind of a binary choice. You either can do it fast or good, right? Fast and then, well, that's the point of agile. We go fast and then minimum product and then increase until it's awesome. Problem is, you move fast and you leave some things behind. Sometimes you just push things for later. Oh, we'll organize it later and later and later, and at some point, well, later comes now, if to quote the great Sandra Bullock. Which leads us to the common mistakes that you can do as a startup. But when I said that you can do it as a startup, bear in mind, it can come at any stage. But when you start still in a small scale, it'll be easier to miss it, but also easier to fix, remediate, and avoid the mistake. So first of all, as I mentioned, dashboards are not decisions. Here's an example. Take a look at this very interesting, very complex, very awesome dashboard. What kind of data, information, and insight we can draw from this? From this? Well, first of all, what's the difference between data, info, and insight? Data is very simple. It's just the point that we have. That resource has that amount of cost, and so on. Information is what we'll get when we start to organize the data into a logical pattern. And if we can take this logical pattern and forecast and turn it into an actionable decision, now we have insights. You see, in the cloud, you can have hundreds of thousands of different resources working together. It's more data than any one person can really consume. That's why we need to organize it into information And also sometimes we want to visualize it. But if we don't understand why we need to visualize, what is the end goal, what is the question we're trying to answer, then we just get questions we don't understand and answers that, well, we don't have. So the first thing we need to do is to understand that when you start working with a dashboard, you need to have context and correlation. Okay. For example, a common example of this mistake is you have your cost analysis. Great. So you have a feature that now start to increase its cost 10 times. It used to cost 100 USD per month. Now it's 20,000. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it a problem? Yes and no. Without context, all you have is the cost. But it's possible this feature costs 20,000, sure, but the revenue is actually now 20 million. So 20,000 is awesome. Could be 20,000, but now actually the increase in users was only 500 times and not 5,000 times. So that's a problem. So we need to understand that without putting things in context, we can't really have a decision. So start with the context, okay? Define the need, define the mindset, and try to get a question out of the dashboard, meaning what I'm trying to understand. Okay. For example, if I see one change, I need to understand all different changes. What changes when the cost changes? Okay, the cost increased. Good. Why? And in understanding the why, I need to first of all have correlation. So what else? If I know that cost changed by a factor of 2 and also revenue by a factor of 3 and user engagement by a factor of 5, that's actually going to give me some sort of insight. Okay. And also, if you have this, as I gave you the dashboard, if it's too big, too complex, if you need to look into it and just observe it, it's too much. A good dashboard have no more than 7 actual data points, or we'll say insight points. Why 7? That's simply what usually we can see in a glance. Right? The idea of dashboard is to sit in a glance in one page. We can see everything together. And also, if you see the solution dashboard alone, so meaning that sometimes a dashboard could be too good and you think, oh, I know the answer for everything. Be careful. You might just missing some of the questions. So, to conclude, define the question first. Know your audience. Understand to each person, there's different needs. The FP&A one thing. The data team, another. The DevOps lead, another, and so on and so forth. Design a reporting around the decision. So the report should serve the person, not the person serve the report. If someone spent time to create a report, to answer a question, and he cannot create an action afterwards, so that is a wasted time, a wasted report, and you wasted not only just their time, but also their effort, and well, you will create a lot of false positive or null positives. Connect data across domains. As I mentioned, we need context and correlation. Business decisions and the technical stack should work together. One should drive the other and vice versa. So that's the first. I started with something very small, very light, right? How do we get this information? Let's move to the second question. Or the second mistake, I'm sorry. And that's the free tier trap. Okay. And that's unfortunately a very common mistake. Once again, mostly for startups, but when the trap actually closes on you, it hurts and it hurts a lot. See, in AWS, free doesn't mean completely free and doesn't mean free forever. For example, D3 Micro is part of free tier. Yeah, for 720 hours per month. First of all, most months have more than 720. It's on the average could be up to 730. Also, if you have 2 or 3 machines, they're running on the same bank of hours. So what will happen is, first of all, you start a POC or sort of dev test, and it's small, and it's still under the free tier limits. So you say, oh, cool. So it doesn't really cost anything. Then you hit the limit, and it could be, as I mentioned, with EC2s, with S3 as well. You have 5 GB. First 5 GB basically costs next to nothing, and then suddenly it becomes even bigger and bigger. Lambdas, also a good example, right? And then when the usage grows, the free become a real bill and fast, and it's gonna hurt a lot. So then you get surprised because overall, and if you look at day to day, that was a free or next to nothing. Suddenly, this next to nothing, right? Oh, fine, it's only 5 cents an hour. Multiply by 730 times 20 machines, boom. You get a real bill real fast, and it's really gonna hurt you. So for that, I would say ignore. Once again, service runs comfortably on the free tier, as I mentioned, traffic grows, and then you start to get the bill. What's the solution? Ignore the free tier, meaning even though you might see out at the end of the month that some of it was covered by the free tier, when you budget and when you start to work with on your forecast, you can ignore the free tier. Look at the actual costs, okay, and then use that as your baseline. Now you can, for example, in small dev operations or small test operations, say, okay, I'm going to limit to the free tier. So I'll open a dev account or test account or several accounts per project, per dev, per test, per environment. And I will create a limit, let's say with a budget, to make sure that I'm still running on the free tier. For everything else, when I know that I won't be able to limit the actual resources under the free tier, I will need to remove credits, free tier, anything that might operate to reduce or to artificially reduce my bill, remove it from my monitoring. You can do it with config. You can do it with a more advanced FinOps platform, such as Umbrella. For example, we can actually tell the system, I know I have free tier, I know I have credits, I want you to ignore it. The day-to-day, I'm going to live as if I have nothing, nor in credits, nor in free tier, and so on. Why? Because then when I will get a surprise at the end of the month, it will be a nice surprise. All right, I forgot that the first 700 hours is actually free. I just saved a few bucks. That's a much better surprise than, oh, I thought it's free. Now I start 500 machines. Turns out only the first one was actually free. Let's go with mistake number 3. And that's one, if I could have done that webinar for 3 hours, 2 of them will be on this mistake. This is one of the most important things you should do, one of the most important things that you forget to do, and one of the hardest things to remediate if you forgot to do it. And that is tagging. See, there's a riddle I always like to use when I'm teaching on tagging. You're asleep in your house, someone knocks at the door. What's the first thing you're going to open? Some people say the door, some people say open the intercom. The first thing you open is your eyes. Because no matter what kind of solution you can find to a problem, first of all, you need to understand and know that there is a problem. And tagging is the fundamental, is the foundation and the base for all monitoring. This is how we name things in a true, actionable, and usable way. We connect teams, owners, projects, environments. We can unlock dashboards, allocation, forecasting, accountability. Each resource has a natural tagging, has the ARN, right? The Amazon resource number. But most of them are not really useful because, sure, right now I created a machine and it has a name. Usually it will be like one of those generic names. And 2 days from now, hell, 2 hours from now, I'll forget what this machine actually did. Tagging allows me to create meaningful structures, schemas, so I can later manipulate and use either for in-depth knowledge or automation and actions. Overall, they reveal a lot of which costs are creating value. Remember the first mistake? Put context and correlation. We can do it with tags. If I can tag, for example, I can tag different cost centers, different machines to correlate with different products, different features. And then I can say this feature, by utilizing this feature, I was able to raise 5 million more in revenue. So now I'm not so scared when I see this feature. Also, this tag is associated with, let's say, $1 million of expenses. 1 million is a very threatening number, unless I can see it's actually related with 5 million revenue. And tagging is the core hygiene that keeps your cloud from turning into chaos. Any kind of automation, any kind of monitoring, any kind of observability relies on good tagging. And I really like using the word hygiene for tagging because it's just like washing your hands. It must become a simple, automatic habit. Not something that you fix after things go wrong. I have a toddler at home. I know I know I need to teach him how to wash his hands, and I'm sure that everyone that has kids knows exactly what happens if you don't. So, speaking of toddlers and washing your hands, that's exactly for the same reasons why tagging fails. Because let's be honest, we DevOps are pretty much like toddlers. We have endless energy, we enthusiasm, we love what we do, we play with new shiny toys, and we're gonna show everyone, look how fast I can go, look how awesome, how big my machine is. Great. I have never seen anyone in all of my DevOps students that show everyone, look how well tagged or how well financially optimized my project is. Actually, even do it as homework. Go to your DevOps and just ask him, do you know how much this project cost? Or what's the actual cost of this feature? The most common answer will be, I'm not sure. If you're not sure, well, that's the first problem. But on the other hand, let's be honest. I'm not sure that every dev should know or we can expect them to know. But if everything is well tagged, I don't need them to know because I can query this information and get the insight quite fast. So tagging, once again, it's not a core KPI. It's not a positively measured, measured, and it's not necessarily necessary for the system to run. In most cases, cost allocation tags are not something that system really needs. Some tags are actually crucial. It creates some sort of automations, but because it's something that you can run, it can run well in dev, and obviously you say, oh, it's a dev environment or it's a sandbox environment. I don't care. It's just temporary. Let's put some sort of placeholder. And we all know that nothing is more permanent than temporary solution. And then you look at that environment and say, oh, cool. That actually was in dev. Let's import into prod. And what I forgot to do, create actual tags because you don't need it to work. I'll give you a great example, not entirely from FinOps, but in one of the courses that I delivered, we create a cool feature, a Lambda that basically scan for all the projects of the students, and if it will compare it with some sort of database, and if these projects already have a passing grade, so this specific homework was already marked by me and was deemed good, the Lambda will terminate and destroy the environment. Someone looked at that in another team and said, "Oh, that's awesome! We can use that for our demos and devs," and you just copy pasted basically. He forgot that because it was a sandbox account for the students, it was the Lambda was actually all powerful. Didn't lead it at all. Then the Lambda just ran on the entire system and destroyed the entire dev environment. Which is a great lesson in number one, how to do a good DR, and number two, always check everything. And just because it works in one environment, it doesn't mean it actually works in a different environment. Even if it does work, there's something that you might be missing. Which another thing, tagging can help you with. So how do you start with that? Start early, really early, automate, and enforce. Because tagging can be, let's say, retro tagging to your legacy could be a manual adventure and not a fun one. So start with small universal tag sets: environment, owner, service, cost center. Also, if you think you might need a tag, think this might be useful, do it. Because in AWS at least, tags doesn't cost anything. And some resources can actually have more than 80 tags. So go ahead. If it costs nothing, you better have it and don't need it, and then need it and not have it. So start small, universal, and environment, owner, service always works. Enforce tagging with your IAC, with your CI/CD pipelines policies. Okay, make sure that everything is well tagged and it's enforceable. Actually, if you look at my Git, I have a cool universal Terraform module that you can create a set of tags, and it will make sure that nothing can go to production if it doesn't go and have those tags. And one cool trick that I always like to use in this case. Remember that FinOps and SecOps looks for the same activity for different reasons. Both of them really like good tagging. So if you as a FinOps or you want to champion the FinOps mindset in your firm or startup, and you don't really get good buy-in from the others, just go to your security personnel or your SecOps and just piggyback on their efforts. Most likely that they already have some sort of enforcement and tagging and so on. An open port or an untagged or unlimited resource, we're still looking for the same things, just for different reasons. So every time I go to a new customer and we work together to create a FinOps policy in the organization, before I even go to finance, I go to security because they probably have 90% of what I need already done. Match tags to cost and revenue centers. Now, I did mention that tag as much as you want, as many as you want, because you better have it and not need it, and vice versa. But if you have this richness of data, still understand what you need to look into and what's not. If you have a cost center that does not correlate to any kind of revenue, or let's say that you look at cost by the feature, but the revenue is by the product, well, maybe you don't really need to look into the feature level. So always try to understand that there's a reason. It gives you back to our first mistake. There's a reason for every question. Every data should service a goal, not vice versa. And yes, tagging is annoying. Tagging is something that either you can do it in advance with your CI/CD, with your automations, or you're going to do it manually. And then it can take even hours and days to try to reconstruct whatever was done in legacy with a DevOps that that couldn't really document. We really got fired 2 years ago, and the whole documentation is, "I'm awesome, trust me." I've actually seen that. That's basically the entire documentation was 500 lines saying, "I'm awesome, trust me." Well, too bad they trusted him, because now we could not understand by glancing into the data what's going on. We had to manually investigate each resource, try to understand who might use it, then go to them and ask them, and then reconstruct the business and technological correlation in this organization. Or we could have just done tagging to begin with. So lesson learned, and I'm sure no one will make this mistake again in that specific form. Those were the main 3 mistakes that I've mentioned. But actually, since everyone is so awesome, here's a bonus one. Mistake number 4. Or actually, it's mistake number 0, because those 3 mistakes have something in common. Those are lessons that you learn in pain. You learn that you learn from your mistake. And unfortunately, sometimes those mistakes could be quite big, quite frequent, sometimes even fatal. But here's a nice way to avoid that. Don't learn from your mistake. Learn from our mistakes. Learn from our experience. Take a trusted advisor with you. Okay, that's the biggest mistake. You're studying alone, and you are not alone. With a FinOps advisor, from day one, every decision carries hidden costs and risk. So use an advisor. Use a reseller. Well, you guessed it, you can use us. Automat-it, we have a team of DevOps and FinOps experts, design engineers, solution architect. We can take you from day one. I have a customer that still have a consumption of absolutely 0, because we're working with them when they're still on the paper. And I can tell you that this customer right now, it's been a few months, and they scaled from 0 to almost 20K. And the amount of waste in their system, I literally just yesterday ran a diagnostic for a meeting we had today. Out of 20K USD consumption, we identified 5, not 5%, 5 USD. Basically, one abandoned IP address that ran for a month, another one that ran for half a month. That's it. Why? Because they created the protocols, the workflows, and the organizational mindset from the beginning. And it was that simple. We didn't work for hours. I think we talked for 2, 3 hours across 5 months. But still, awesome, across 3 months, sorry. But still, that's going to pay in dividends forward because they're going to avoid a mistake. They didn't have to learn from their pains. They've learned from my pains and benefit and took the fruit of my efforts and our wisdoms together. So, as I mentioned, with Automat IT, we bring FinOps expert, DevOps engineer, solution architect. We bring FinOps best practices into your team, not from day one, from day zero. And with that, we can help you scale fast and safely. And yes, you can have fast, good, and safe all in the same time. You just need someone to help you design it better. And with that, I think we're just with it, I'm just spot on 40 minutes. Let's move to the Q&A.
Tamir, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Appreciate it. I really liked the presentation, not only the content, obviously, which is super straightforward, but also, your vibe. I really love that. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Um, all right. So as you mentioned, Q&A. So first question from Yaakov is, from data to insight, can we get a practical example, please?
Yes. So a perfect example, as I mentioned, is tie your costs to other KPIs that can drive revenue, users, actual revenue, number of features that are deployed, and so on. Just make sure to have correlation. And the other example, ask the question and then create the query afterward. So don't ask what is the cost of what is our budget. I want to understand what kind of budget will allow me to scale and still put it within my funds to work for 2 years.
All right. Thank you. Another question, anonymously, is what is the best way for our engineering team to communicate upcoming architectural or feature changes that will significantly impact the budget before the spike hits?
That's a great question. First of all, the very fact that you're communicating that to your team or if you have a FinOps advisor, that's 90% of the solution. The best way to communicate is when you're still in the planning phase. Because then not only that we can brace for the spike, we can also try to remediate the spike. For example, if I know that this feature going to utilize 200 M5 extra large machines, I can buy reserve instances. If I know that this feature, so that was for the technical stack, but also I will take this solution. Okay, I'm going to have a feature that will cost 205 M5 extra large machines. Cool. I'll go to the business side and said, hey, this feature going to last for a long time? Do you think that that's something that we're going to really invest in? That's part of what our company's future? And they'll say yes. So I can just go ahead and commit for 3 years. And also, then I can go to the FP&A and said, hey, do we have the budget to maybe upfront some or all of these costs? With those 3 questions, which by the way, can take all of 5 minutes to answer, we can save up to 70% of the costs. So move forward as soon as possible. It's better that you have to go and say, I have an idea, let's prepare, and then take this plan and delete it once we understand that this idea is not usable, than to find out in the late stage, even in the production stage, that we have a spike.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. For now, there is one more question, and if I won't see anything else, so we'll move to the last part, which is the raffle. So the last question for now is, yeah, also anonymously, how can a DevOps engineer quickly identify and start tracking a cost per unit metric that usually the FinOps team finds valuable instead of just reporting raw cloud spend?
Okay, that's a great question. It's actually a more advanced feature, so I'll give me a moment to explain the situation. So we have something called the unit economics. The idea of unit economics is to try to understand exactly what each change and each feature and each resource or resource usage will cost us, right? Because in the cloud, we're not just buying a machine, we're renting it. Sometimes up to just like a taxi. I'm not even renting a car. I'm just renting a service, like a Lambda, to run exactly to satisfy a need, and then that's it. So theoretically, I can tie each cent I'm using to each cent I'm actually receiving in revenue, because I just tie two things: my actual per usage cost and my actual per usage revenue. So the first feature, how to really tie down everything into a good unit economics. The key is to be well tagged, because if I tag a resource and I can narrow down the group that I'm tagging into subgroups and subgroups, I can then use that with cost allocation tags and create a workflow that really understand how each change in one feature correlate with a change in cost. So be well tagged. That's number one. Number two, use monitoring agents. And for example, in Kubernetes, run a Prometheus agent so you can really go by container insights, because otherwise your standard reporting will be regular EC2 consumption. You don't show by the pod what kind of cost, only by the actual node with the entire machine. So use good monitoring and good tagging, and give it to the fields from that point is very easy. And if you don't have a FinOps, that's how you can definitely look into it, because once you have the tag and monitoring, that's simple arithmetics on how to create good formulas to create a good unit economics.
All right. Tamir, thank you so much again for this
It's a
detailed
pleasure.
response. Um, all right, so if that's okay with you, I just need you to please stop sharing the screen in order for me to be able to share it. So
Sure.
I will be able to show everyone our, by the way, if anyone wants, this is the QR code to contact us to try and book a meeting or simply get more information if you're interested. Thank you also for sharing that, Amir.
Okay. I'm moving the sharing.